Watch right now on the Front News project. Iran is in flames. Putin's friend Khamenei has been destroyed. The war in the Middle East is the beginning of the Kremlin regime's collapse. The Ukrainian Armed Forces counteroffensive 2026. Footage of real battles and catastrophic losses among Russian conscripts. You have to see this. And what's more, Putin is sending Russian students to die in Ukraine. The bunker dweller's signature tactic: you can never have too much cannon fodder. Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch right now. Greetings, Vladimir Timoshenko here with you. And let's get straight to the main topic. The war in the Middle East, which many are already calling World War III, is unfortunately gaining momentum. And Putin's Russia is also involved here. In short, on the morning of March 2nd, the situation escalated due to massive mutual strikes between Israel, the United States, and pro-Iranian forces, which led to the start of a large-scale offensive operation against Putin's friends from Tehran and Hezbollah. We've gathered the most up-to-date information about the war in the Middle East and its echoes in Moscow. Let's watch.
There will be no ceasefire. On the contrary, the entire Middle East is entering the war. Now, even many major European countries are also starting to get actively involved in this situation. Iran has officially refused to negotiate with the United States. Tehran is prepared for a long war. Moreover, they are attacking everyone indiscriminately. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, and Iraq have already come under attack from Tehran. Even the British airbase Akrotiri in Cyprus was targeted. A drone flew there. The UK Ministry of Defense confirmed the strike. Cyprus President Nikos Christodoulidis stated that the base sustained only minor damage.
I want to make it clear. Our country is in no way involved and does not intend to participate in any military operations.
Iran mostly vents its anger on Israel, often targeting ordinary residential neighborhoods. However, on Monday morning, a strike was also carried out against the military and political leadership. The IRGC claims to have attacked Netanyahu's office. Allegedly, the Israeli Air Force Command was also targeted. Israel, as well as American and European bases, are not Iran's only targets. Iranian attacks have also targeted oil infrastructure. Tehran has already struck a refinery in Saudi Arabia. There is also information about a drone attack on offshore oil platforms in the United Arab Emirates. Due to the strikes on the oil industry, as well as uncertainty surrounding the operation of the Strait of Hormuz, which is controlled by Iran and through which most tankers pass, the price of black gold has soared to over $80 per barrel. Typically, about 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas passes through the Strait of Hormuz every day. Iran has stated that the waterway remains open, but also confirmed attacks on 3 oil tankers on Sunday. Israel and the United States effectively control the skies over Iran and continue to methodically destroy its military and defense infrastructure. In response, Iran has officially stated that it does not plan to develop missiles capable of reaching US territory, but calls strikes on American bases abroad a just response.
You said that your missiles cannot reach the United States. You are not seeking to reach the US, but you also said that it would be necessary as part of self-defense. To be clear, do you guarantee that Iran is not building and will not build missiles capable of reaching the United States?
I can certainly confirm that for you, and yes, it is.
Sir, if this is a red line for you, why are attacks on American air bases abroad justified?
It is simply because they continue to attack us relentlessly.
However, the countries that have suffered from Iran's strikes clearly do not see any justice in this. With its actions, Tehran has only increased the number of its enemies. The UAE and Saudi Arabia are already joining the war against Iran. Both countries have strongly condemned Tehran's actions and warned of the consequences of further violations of the sovereignty of neighboring states. And even France is ready to join the war.
France is ready in accordance with the agreements that bind it to its partners and the principle of collective self-defense provided for by international law to take part in their protection.
The only country not ready for active measures is Russia. There, they once again stated that they are in constant contact with the Iranian leadership. Simply put, they're keeping their finger on the pulse but have no intention of doing anything. China has also spoken out. The Celestial Empire has called on all parties involved in the Iranian conflict to cease military actions and prevent an escalation of the conflict.
The strikes by the US and Israel on Iran violated international law, and China is deeply concerned about the consequences for neighboring countries.
Analysts say the next 48 hours will be decisive. Either there will be the capitulation of the Iranian regime or further escalation. After the death of Ayatollah Khamenei, protests in the country intensified. There are also reports of tensions between the Iranian Regular Army and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The risk of nuclear escalation is extremely high. In addition, Iran has announced that a nuclear facility in Natanz has been hit. The IAEA warns of the risk of radiation leakage.
Now let's analyze the current situation on the Pokrovsk front line. Fierce fighting continues. On the Pokrovsk front, the enemy launched 20 attacks. The occupiers tried to advance in the areas of the settlements of Shakovo, Krasny Liman, Rodinskoye, Pokrovsk, Kotlina, Udachnoye, Molodetskoye, and towards Belitsky. One clash is still ongoing. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian Armed Forces continue to reclaim their territories. The counteroffensive in the south of the country is in full swing. Hundreds of square kilometers are once again coming under Ukraine's control. How is the Ukrainian offensive of 2026 progressing, and what are the enemy's losses? More on this coming up. If you don't want to sign a peace agreement, then you'll sign a capitulation. While our Western partners, led by Donald Trump, have only just realized that it's impossible to deal with Putin and the Kremlin or trust in Moscow's good intentions, the Ukrainian armed forces have taken matters into their own hands and, with the arrival of spring, have begun reclaiming their own territories.
Our counterattacks are taking place at the junction of three regions: Zaporizhzhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, and possibly also the Zaporizhzhia region. These counterattacks are aimed at improving our tactical position and eliminating enemy infiltration groups that have penetrated deep into our combat formations.
Our defenders are certain, whatever the bunker dweller says, it's all lies. The Russian offensive will stop only in one case, when the Kremlin has neither the means nor the people left to attack.
There is no reason to believe that the Russian Federation will stop only at the borders of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions. That is why the top priority for both Ukraine and its partners is to prevent such scenarios of expansion, namely the widening of the theater of hostilities at the expense of other Ukrainian territories.
Thus, the Ukrainian Defense Forces are carrying out successful and effective local counterattacks in certain sectors of the front. For a long time, this has prevented the Russian occupiers from advancing, particularly toward the Dnipropetrovsk region.
At present, it has not been possible to deliver the necessary number of personnel from the Russian rear from deep within Russia. And in fact, let's add to this, if you look at the reports from the Ukrainian General Staff, every week there are strikes on personnel on the locations of Russian army troops in the temporarily occupied territories. Obviously, this affects the quality of the troops, their condition, and now also their numbers.
The main goal of the Ukrainian armed forces is to drive the Russian Vostok group out of the Dnipropetrovsk region and stabilize the front in the Zaporizhzhia area. The successful actions of our defenders in these directions have already led to the liberation of a number of settlements and hundreds of kilometers of territory within the regions. Thus, only a couple of villages near the administrative border remain occupied in the Dnipropetrovsk region. However, if you look at the maps, you can notice that over the past few weeks, the armed forces of Ukraine have withdrawn from a number of positions directly on the front line, turning them into so-called gray zones. And while Russian propaganda presents this as a victory for the Kremlin, it turns out that our defenders have begun to employ a new combat tactic there.
Today, the gray zone that exists in the Pokrovsko-Minohorivka agglomeration is becoming smaller. Today, in some locations, there is no longer any presence, no physical presence of our troops. But this is not, let's say, some kind of sensational news, because small aerial assets are operating, our drones are working, which in turn prevent the enemy from advancing more intensively according to the deadlines the Russians have set for themselves.
All this gives analysts the right to say that the Ukrainian military campaign of 2026 has not only begun, but is entering an active phase. The only ones who don't understand this are the bunker dweller himself and his propagandists, who constantly twist the facts.
We are preparing an offensive, but we know nothing about any counteroffensive.
But it seems that not even the propagandists themselves believe that the Russian occupiers are capable not only of advancing, but even of holding the defense. Hence the new agenda on Russian TV.
Russia is advancing on all left fronts. Even on the air of Mordor 1, they can't figure out who exactly is planning the offensive. From my personal perspective, this is an exceptionally fascinating and noteworthy symptom. And once again, we are no longer hearing any of those loud exclamations about how we urgently need to go to Kyiv or to any other similar locations. No, they're talking about negotiations and ending the military actions.
So it turns out no matter how much the bunker dweller and his generals bluster, he won't be able to carve off another piece of Ukraine. But as for losing the already occupied territories, the Kremlin could do so much faster than it seems.
No matter how much Western newspapers write that Putin is ready to fight until he dies, which may well be true until he dies, but that could happen in the foreseeable future, there are simply too many factors pointing to this.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Konstantinovka sector of the front. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. On the Konstantinovka front, the occupiers launched 11 assaults on the defenders' positions in the areas of the settlements of Konstantinovka, Klishchivka, Ivanopole, Bereztok, Rusin Yar, Sofivka, and in the directions of Ilyanovka and Novopavlovka.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Pelicans are joining the Flamingos. This is a new Ukrainian ballistic missile, and it is laser weapons created by our Ukrainian engineers that are effectively shooting down Shaheeds in the Ukrainian sky. Right now, we will tell you about a breakthrough in Ukraine's production of its own weapons and how this is already affecting the course of the war. We present this to your attention.
Ukrainian missiles are striking at Russian pride, the factories where Iskanders and Oreshniks are produced, as well as enterprises without which the Russian military-industrial complex cannot function. The elegant Ukrainian flamingos have now officially gone out on the hunt for their next meal.
Flamingos just in the past week.
Just in the past week, Flamingo has shown that it exists, and now Russians really do need to fear for their defense industry plants, their chemical industry, literally every facility located within a 2,000-kilometer radius.
But Flamingo is a cruise missile, undoubtedly very powerful, but it wasn't enough. Now, however, Ukraine has royal flash. This is truly something that can be called a breakthrough and a winning combination. A ballistic missile. Its official name is the FP7 ballistic missile system, and its primary developer is Firepoint, the very same innovative aerospace company that produces the Flamingo. They first publicly announced the ambitious development of these advanced ballistic missiles back in September of 2025. And now, after much anticipation, they have finally demonstrated the system in full action for the world to see. According to the technical specifications, the FP7 has a range of 200 kilometers, a maximum speed of 1,500 meters per second, and a circular error probable of 14 meters. The warhead weighs 150 kilograms.
If, for example, the FP7 goes into mass production,
If the FP7 goes into mass production, it will also create huge problems for the front line, because this means that supporting combat operations against Ukraine at the operational tactical level will move to a completely different level for the Russians, downward. All logistics hubs, headquarters, any logistics, railways, all of these will be under constant threat.
This means that the Russians will have to hide everything within at least a 200-kilometer radius. Although playing hide-and-seek won't help, because Firepoint is also working on developing the FP9 missile with a range of up to 855 kilometers. This was also announced back in September, and we shouldn't forget about the Flamingo either. In parallel with offensive weapons, Ukraine is also working on the development of defensive ones. We're talking about air defense. A few weeks ago, it became known that Ukraine had created the Sunray laser system, which is used to destroy Russian drones.
This weapon easily fits in the trunk of a car. It makes no sound and emits no light, not even the familiar red beam from the movies. When, just the other day, a team of Ukrainian soldiers and engineers showed me their prototype, it seemed quite simple to use, almost too simple.
Undoubtedly, it's another breakthrough, but even this is not enough. That's why official Kyiv has announced additional steps to strengthen air defense. According to Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, Ukraine is now discussing the creation of joint consortia with partners to accelerate the production of anti-ballistic missiles.
We are critically short of PAC-3 type missiles for air defense to protect ourselves from Russian ballistic threats. We also spoke with the president about creating joint consortia with partners to produce anti-ballistic missiles more quickly.
At the same time, Kyiv is working on destroying the Russians' offensive capabilities. Fedorov reported the destruction of a communication system that allowed Shaheds to attack northern Ukraine from Belarus.
We managed to eliminate the mesh network. This is a special type of network where each device acts as a relay for others, creating continuous coverage that was used by the Shaheds in the north, which has had a positive impact on the defense capability of Kyiv and central Ukraine.
Fedorov did not share details of the operation, but it is clear that it involved the elimination of a target on Belarusian territory, which means that, most likely, another psychological barrier has been crossed. Kyiv can carry out operations on Belarusian territory if Belarusian actions pose a threat to Ukraine, and now Lukashenko should consider whether the game is worth the candle.
And now, an analysis of the situation on the Sloviansk front. Let's be honest, this is yet another sacred target for Putin and his entire pack, accordingly. And here, the situation is as tense as it gets. On the Sloviansk front, the enemy tried 11 times to advance in the areas of the settlements of Yampol, Dronivka, Platonivka, Zakotny, Rezjakivka, and towards Rai Alexandrovka. The leadership of the Ukrainian army is taking active steps to recruit foreigners for military service. Ukraine needs recruitment centers for foreigners all over the world, stated Serhiy Beskresnov, advisor to the Minister of Defense. How many foreigners are planned to be recruited, for what tasks, and what pressing problems will this solve? The answers are in our report.
These are drone operators from the so-called International Legion of Ukraine at work. They easily destroy the equipment of the Russian occupiers. Volunteers from different countries around the world have been fighting for Ukraine against Russia since the very first days of the full-scale invasion. And now, in the 5th year of the war, the Ukrainian side needs as many of these fighters as possible, more than ever before.
Of course, we need to involve more foreigners in the war if our human resources are limited. We pay soldiers on the front lines a huge amount by the standards of many countries. We need recruitment centers all over the world and a system for working with foreigners here. Right now, all of this exists, but it works poorly in terms of scale, speed, and selection.
As of the beginning of 2026, more than 10,000 foreign volunteers from 75 countries are serving in the Ukrainian Armed Forces. About 40% of them are from South America. Due to the low standard of living on their continent, professional soldiers come to Ukraine and sign a contract. About 600 people join the Ukrainian army every month, but right now this is not enough. Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, recently stated that a comprehensive plan for recruiting foreign fighters into the ranks of the Ukrainian Armed Forces has already been developed. Fedorov said that specific steps will begin to be publicly announced and implemented in the near future.
A comprehensive plan has been developed. It is being adjusted along the way. Every day we hold meetings with relevant agencies and the military according to this plan to make sure of its effectiveness. And in the coming months, you will see how step by step we begin to make concrete decisions.
Russian Telegram channels with large audiences are also reporting that the Ukrainian ministry has begun to seriously address the issue of recruiting foreigners into the Ukrainian army. And that means Moscow is not satisfied with this scenario.
One of the directions of the plan is to develop solutions that will allow for an increased presence of foreigners in the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine.
In addition to salary and combat pay in the Ukrainian army, foreign fighters can be offered the opportunity to obtain citizenship. This option is also reasonable to offer to those who already live in Ukraine but have not received citizenship. Service in the armed forces of Ukraine will grant the right to stay in the country they have chosen to live in, to conduct business, and to start a family. The main point is that we are not talking about mercenaries with no legal status, but about a person who is officially enlisted in the Ukrainian army and becomes a part of it with all the associated privileges.
I want to emphasize that this is not a mercenary system. These are all foreigners who sign a contract with the armed forces of Ukraine and serve in the AFU, receiving salaries and bonuses as is customary in the Ukrainian military.
Ukraine's human resources are limited in the 5th year of the war, so having a large number of foreigners in the armed forces is an excellent solution to the problem. Moreover, by the standards of many countries around the world, those on the front lines in Ukraine are paid quite a lot.
And now we move to the Alexandrovsk direction of the front. The Russian world continues here as well to destroy, kill, and maim. In the Alexandrovsk direction, the enemy launched 6 assaults in the areas of the settlements of Voronoi, Ternovoy, Zlagoda, and Stepovoy, and the villages of Pizancy and Veliko-Mikhailovka were subjected to enemy airstrikes. 1-year contracts, large payments, service without interrupting studies, and transfer to a state-funded place. Or how the Kremlin is recruiting students to serve in the so-called drone forces. The campaign to actively recruit students to participate in the war against Ukraine began in January of this year. We will tell you how Moscow is recruiting young people and why this campaign to enlist students is doomed to fail from the start.
The Kremlin is recruiting students for the war in Ukraine.
ECHO has found that students are being recruited for the war in at least 70 educational institutions across 24 regions, including annexed Crimea.
The active campaign to recruit students to participate in the war against Ukraine began in January. Students are being offered contracts with the drone forces. The Ministry of Defense promises large payments, service without interrupting studies, a transfer to a state-funded place, and a 1-year contract.
First and foremost, these letters, God forgive me, these letters of happiness are received by those students who failed their exams or something else. They are the first ones to get these messages from the dean's office or the rector's office. Sign the contract and first of all, you'll be assigned to the drone forces. Few people actually understand what this even is or whether it's explicitly stated in the contract. Not to mention, it's an outright lie when they say it's a contract for almost a year, when in reality, that's not the case at all. And this is, well, what you might call a scam for suckers. On the other hand, students are actually pretty sharp, and it's unlikely they'll fall for such an obvious scam.
And yes, the Russian Ministry of Defense's promise of a 1-year contract is a lie, because students are signed to a standard military contract which cannot be terminated. Moreover, service in the drone forces is not guaranteed. A recruited student can be transferred by command, for example, to the infantry.
At the same time, students are being pressured. They are forced to attend recruitment meetings with threats of punishment for not showing up. Sometimes students, especially those with poor academic performance, are summoned individually to the administration, and during such meetings, they are persuaded to sign a contract.
In addition, students are promised large payments, to which some educational institutions add their own bonuses. But even this has not exactly resulted in long lines of enthusiastic students eager to serve in the community.
When it comes to the specific challenge of recruiting students, relying solely on monetary motivation simply won't work effectively. This is because, first and foremost, these students are certainly not like some desperate alcoholics from the most remote provinces. Rather, they are intelligent individuals who have constant access to a fairly wide and diverse range of information in today's world. Therefore, any student understands that no matter how much money is offered, it is a price for their life.
And Russian students, it must be admitted, have questions for the authorities not only regarding blatant lies such as presenting a contract with the Ministry of Defense as the main start in life.
It should be said that the authorities have done so many harmful things to students, first and foremost by cancelling the Bologna process, thereby eliminating the opportunity for young people to go on internships in other countries. That's why students' attitude toward this government is, if not outright oppositional, then certainly quite critical.
By signing a contract, the recruited students fall completely under the control of the Russian Ministry of Defense, and it's a one-way ticket where there are no rights or guarantees that you will survive. And it is clear that, as luck would have it, Russian students seem to comprehend this situation perfectly well.
That's all for today, but very soon on Front News there will be new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.